welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today we are continuing on with the advent calendar of Christmas horror movies, and today we're having a double feature of movie reviews, the first of which being the 2007 movie P2. This was directed by Frank Calfoun, and it was recommended to me by a few folks as kind of a general Christmas horror movie, and I found it to be a fairly average cat and mouse kind of thriller horror movie. That ultimately, the biggest failure of it was that it put a lot of its eggs in a fairly weak basket. This is a movie that very much relied on a make or break situation by its villain, and in this case, I think the villain was just portrayed not necessarily to the fullest extent it could have been. In this movie, we have the character of Angela, who is a businesswoman working late after a Christmas party. Everybody else has basically kind of gone home to be gone for an extended break over the Christmas holiday. And in working late, she, through a series of happenstances, gets trapped in the building. And while she is trapped in this building, most notably in the parking garage, P2, she is set upon by a villain, an assailant. In this case, the character of Thomas, played by Wes Bentley. That may be a little bit, spoilery. However, I don't really think so. It's revealed fairly early on. I have a feeling that the filmmakers here set this up so that the nature of the villain or the identity of the villain would be a bit of a surprise reveal, even though it is within the first 20-30 minutes of the film. But honestly, I think that if it was set up to be a surprise, it's a pretty lackluster one because they only introduced a few characters and they were mostly normal, weird, normal, and I was really expecting the weird one to be kind of just subterfuge, be a red herring, and wind up with one of these other normal. No, it was just the weird one. I mean, they pretty much broadcasted it right from the get-go, and then it turned out to be him, and we found out pretty early on. So, if that winds up into spoiler territory, then I apologize, but regardless, I think it would be a lot easier to continue on with this review if I am able to be candid about who is attacking the character of Angela. So, then it kind of turns into a cat and mouse thing. She's trying to escape. He holds all the keys because he's the security guard. He holds the keys. He's the gatekeeper, and so on and so forth. She's trying to call for outside help. She's trying to fight him off, so on and so forth. I think the failure of this film, as far as the villain goes, is the nature of the character that is being portrayed is one of pretty much just a sociopathic incel that is not very intimidating or interesting. And honestly, I think it was kind of a situation of not only just the way he was written, but also the way he was portrayed by Wes Bentley. I just wasn't terribly impressed by this because ultimately how he came across more than anything else was whiny. He was just a bit of a whiny bitch in this movie. And yeah, he got angry and he did a lot of bodily harm and he was very, methodical and so forth. But I still don't think he made for a very fascinating or intimidating villain to the audience. And that's really kind of who you have to sell it to. You can sell it as an intimidating figure to the Angela character all you want, because you're kind of writing both sides. He scowls, she screams. You control all that. But the filmmaker does not control how the audience feels about him, and that's who you need to sell it to, and that's ultimately where it fell down. Just became a bit of a whiny incel, and it didn't make for a good villain in that regard. Now, the Angela character I did like. I thought that she was portrayed fairly well. However, there were a lot of stupid decision moments in this one, and it's an important thing to kind of balance this. This entire subgenre of horror, of cat and mouse kind of thriller, is very, very reliant on balance. That's important as all get out. It comes down to the balance of power between the two characters. And the thing is, you cannot have that balance of power be too one-sided for any real amount of time if every single thing the hero does completely falls flat because the villain is always 3 steps ahead of them, and the balance of power never shifts one way or the other. It's always with the villain, it becomes boring. And likewise, if the balance of power is always with the hero and the villain's just incompetent, then we really don't have much of a thriller movie. It becomes boring, and honestly, it's tough to stretch that out over an hour and a half. So it's important that one person have the upper hand, and then the transfer of power happens so that the other person has the upper hand. And it's the cat and mouse situation. Both the cat and the mouse need to have an equal amount of power just kind of being distributed. And this movie actually does a pretty good job with that level of balance. I think that Angela and the Thomas character both maintained a little bit of upper hand on one or the other, then transfer back and forth. But that's where it falls down, is that transfer. It's that handoff. Typically, it would be a situation where if Angela has outsmarted Thomas and is running away and is, she got away, she figured something out, she's hiding, then the way that it would transfer power back to Thomas is by her doing something just incredibly stupid. So it ultimately made for a bit of a watch where I started to check out. The eye rolling became very activated. And instead of being really with this character, I just wanted to just kind of scream at the screen. And then eventually I just kind of wanted the movie to end. But again, I do think the acting performance of the Angela character by Rachel Nichols was actually pretty darn good. I thought it was actually quite good, especially in contrast to the Wes Bentley performance of Thomas. I'm going to go and throw up all the scores here. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot I thought was fairly average. We really didn't tread a whole lot of new territory here, and what we did wind up going over wasn't done in any real new, interesting fashion. The intent, I kind of think that this movie, it was entertaining enough. It was very well polished, I'll say that. But these cat and mouse movies, they need to they need to keep the intellectual stimuli going, and this one really failed to do that. The villain wasn't very interesting. The heroine was really good, but at the same time made a lot of stupid decisions. Ultimately, I enjoyed what I saw, but there was a lot of me also checking out of the movie. So 11 out of 25 points there. The acting, some good props on that one, and that mostly comes down to, again, Rachel Nichols playing Angela. Wes Bentley, I don't want to rail on the guy, but I don't know if it was necessarily the way he was portrayed as a acting performance or the way he was portrayed as just following the directorial instructions. But either way, what was presented on the screen there, I just wasn't all that impressed with. But all told, balancing everything out, I'm willing to give 16 out of 25 points for the acting, and the technical, 18 out of 25 points. There were some pretty good practical effects going on in here. This was fairly well polished. This was a mainstream motion picture, and it felt like it. Really no huge complaints there. This was very competently done on a technical level. So that gives us a grand total of 57 out of 100 points. So would I recommend this movie? I would say that I enjoyed it enough that I would not talk anybody out of it. I will not dissuade anybody. If you really have it in your queue and you really want to watch it, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. But I also really can't recommend it either. If somebody's coming to me just completely fresh and saying, I want to watch a good cat and mouse horror movie, this would not be one that would really be on my list. So take that for what you will, but that is my review of 2007's P2. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you also today at my next movie review. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and if you want to support me further, my Patreon and my merchandise storefront links are below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.